it actually takes quite a bit for me to come to the conclusion that I actually am no longer willing to support a comic book artist or writer for reasons outside of just being bad at their job. I do not take these type of decisions lightly when it comes to things outside of just quality of art. But Daniel Warren Johnson at New York Comic Con did a commission this week. He proudly presented it out there on social medias, and it has Absolute Batman with his hands around the neck of an ICE officer. And the way I interpret it is that he had broken his neck, although I guess some people could say he's merely strangling him. I have had people say, Wes, you should have known that Daniel Warren Johnson was a lefty the entire time. It's not really about that. That's not really coming into the equation. I actually support plenty of lefty comic book creators, people that are politically not in line with what I personally believe in, but I think they're good writers. They just happen to have differences of opinions. At this point, I assume essentially every comic book creator working for Marvel, DC, and basically all the other publishers are leaning in one particular direction when it comes to politics. And in this case, the reason I have a problem with what Daniel Warren Johnson did in that commission, actually, I don't have a problem with him doing the commission. You know, commission work is what it is. It's the fact that he proudly presented it to everybody because obviously he was very happy with the work that he did. And in my opinion, the way that I see it, and art is subjective, right, is that he is promoting violence against the men and women of ICE who are obviously in the news right now. They're being besieged in multiple cities with people going down there basically rioting. We even had somebody a couple weeks ago pull out a rifle and start shooting at what they thought were ICE officers, but I guess accidentally killed a couple of illegal aliens in the process, which I think is awful. I've seen enough death and destruction in my life that I wish that we could all get along. Although I do freely admit that that is a pipe dream, and that's not what's going to happen. But the way I interpret what Daniel Warren Johnson did was support for the people that are rioting and attacking ICE officers in multiple cities right now and calling for more political violence. That's the way I see it. And at that point, if you're going to go out there and use a DC character or a Marvel character and go push radical, violent means for your political ends, I don't want to support you anymore. I don't think that's something that I want to do in my soul. People will be like, but Wes, what about the letterer or the other people working on the book? Well, it sucks to be them. If I could give my money to, Skybound or, DC Comics with their annual and say, here, these are the funds that I'm going to give you, but you're not allowed to give any of them to Daniel Warren Johnson, fuck it. I'd probably do it. But at this point, I don't want any of my money going to that guy because I think he's going to take my money and he's going to go support stuff like that. I think he's going to give financial means for people to go out there and try to perpetrate violence on ICE officers. I am not for violence of any kind. When people went out there and they took Daniel Warren Johnson's image, with the ICE officer and they replaced it with an Antifa person and said, look, I made it better. I don't think you made it better. I don't want to see Absolute Batman or the real Batman or Superman or any comic book character going out there and snapping the necks of Antifa members. It doesn't sit right with me. In fact, it sits just as wrong as what Daniel Warren Johnson did. And the weird thing is that Scott Snyder, who obviously is going to be having Daniel Warren Johnson working on his Absolute Batman annual and is now a major consultant role. He talked about it recently on Casually Comics, actually went out there and kind of endorsed this. Now, I'm not personally one that always attributes support just by liking or sharing something. I share plenty of things that I don't agree with. In fact, I shared the image of what Daniel Warren Johnson did. Now, I did put clarifying comments with the quote and called him a fucking clown because that's how I feel about it. But Scott Snyder did go out there and like and retweet it, which a lot of people are considering support for what Daniel Warren Johnson had done with Absolute Batman and that call to violence that I personally see it as. And I know that other people out there see it that way as well. And I don't know why Scott Snyder would do this. Everything is going very, very well for him. He's the talk of the town. He's the belle of the ball when it comes to American comic books. He's the one person that's kind of doing it right, getting people excited for comic books. He's got the #1 selling book. He's got the biggest franchise out there. He's got the world by the balls right now. And then he commits an own goal by doing something like that. Now, me personally, I'm not going to stop reading DCKO or Absolute Batman just because Scott Snyder liked or retweeted something. But I know that there are plenty of people out there that have already decided to do that. And I don't know what he was thinking, throwing his support behind a heinous image like that. He is not rank and file. He's not one of the guys. He's not somebody that comes in and does a Green Lantern issue every once in a while. He's one of the leaders at DC Comics. And technically, Daniel Warren Johnson and a lot of other artists out there aren't supposed to be doing commissions of Batman without DC Comics approval. Now, they let him do it as a wink, wink, nod, nod. Hey, we know that we don't pay you enough, but you can do commissions featuring our characters. And what Daniel Warren Johnson and certainly what Scott Snyder are doing are potentially putting DC Comics in a bad position. Now, they've already been put in a bad position because of people like Scott Snyder, who certainly knew who Gretchen Felker Martin was, certainly knew that Gretchen Felker Martin had wished violence or threatened violence upon J.K. Rowling, certainly knew that Gretchen Felker Martin had celebrated 9/11, was okay with keeping the book on the docket. And I know for a fact that Scott Snyder knew that stuff. And he is not painting a very good picture of himself. And I think a lot of people are going to have deeper realizations about whether or not they want to continue supporting DC Comics, especially after the Gretchen Felker Martin, Charlie Kirk stuff. And now we've got Daniel Warren Johnson using Absolute Batman to advocate violence on real people, ICE officers, and the major consultant, the leader of the Absolute line, Scott Snyder himself, going out there and seemingly, because he put nothing else into it, giving it his personal stamp of approval. You can sit in your home and think whatever you want. You can have a discussion with your loved ones in private and say whatever you want. But once you start putting that shit out there public, and trust me, Twitter, Instagram, Bluesky, all that stuff is public speaking right now. Now you have forced people to make a decision. Do I still want to support this person? Do I still want to support this company? Do I like what they're representing? Do I want them to take my hard-earned money that I'm using to buy their product and divert those funds to things that I absolutely don't believe in? And this is what Daniel Warren Johnson, Scott Snyder, and DC Comics are kind of doing right now. Me personally, I had bought 2 volumes of Transformers for my 10-year-old for Christmas, and I planned on giving it to him for Christmas because I like to give my kids comic books for Christmas. He happens to be an enormous Transformers fan. He is not going to be getting those books for Christmas. I'm going to be throwing them in the trash. He's getting to the age where he's going to be curious about the people whose books he's reading, who's doing this, who's doing that. Social media is out there. I know that I can't protect him from it forever, but I'm certainly not going to encourage my child to go out there and discover somebody like Daniel Warren Johnson. And it also brings up other things and conversations that I had had with myself, and I thought that I had made a definitive decision on, like Jeff Lemire. I don't know if any of you knew this or remember it or saw it, but when all the riots were happening during COVID, remember we were all supposed to stay home unless you were out there burning cities down, which is basically what Antifa and BLM were doing. Jeff Lemire actually created a comic artist like Antifa logo specific for them so that they could show their support of Antifa as comic book artists. I remember at the time thinking, you know what? I don't like what Antifa's doing, and I don't know that I want to support an artist or artists that are supporting Antifa. And I decided, you know what? Wes, you're getting your panties in a bunch. He probably doesn't even realize just how dangerous and violent Antifa really are. And I've definitely come to the realization over the last several months, and I'm not one of those people that ascribes to the "they all want you dead" scenario, but I am coming around to the realization that far more of them want me dead and you dead and a lot of people dead than I actually wanted to give it credit for. And I don't think Jeff Lemire just went blindly supporting Antifa because he didn't realize just how violent they are. I've come to the realization he likely knows exactly what they represent, just how violent they are, and he does support that. Not only am I not going to be supporting Daniel Warren Johnson, but I don't think I'm going to be supporting Jeff Lemire either. I don't need to know your violent, perverse political fantasies about how you would snuff your opponents out if you've gotten the chance, or you supporting people that are advocating and actually doing that on a daily basis. I don't mind you sneaking your politics into the comic book. I'll read Al Ewing's Immortal Hulk with his bullshit that he put in there. I can get over that kind of stuff. But once you go this far, I think I'm out. And there's a clear line in the sand, and I don't want to support it anymore. And I know lots of people are going to disagree with me. They're like, Wes, you're a fucking snowflake, dude. Oh, well, guess maybe I am a fucking snowflake, if that's what you want to call me. If you think that name calling is going to affect me after 47 years on this earth, you are wildly misinformed. I can tell you that one right now. So those are my thoughts on Daniel Warren Johnson and his commission featuring Absolute Batman breaking the neck of an ICE officer. I disavow it unequivocally. I will not be supporting him anymore. And I've decided I'm not going to support Jeff Lemire anymore. And Scott Snyder is certainly on thin fucking ice at this point. If you need a refresher of all the stuff that Scott Snyder knew about Gretchen Felker Martin before Gretchen Felker Martin actually celebrated the assassination of Charlie Kirk, I do want to invite you to check this video out. It doesn't really talk about him specifically, but I know for a fact he knew all about this stuff. Not only had I presented it, he knew it fucking personally. These are the type of people that we are dealing with. I do appreciate the time, and remember to keep thinking critical.